Welcome to PianoInspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music. Welcome. I'm Jennifer Snow, the CEO and Executive Director of the Francis Clark Center, and I'm honored and delighted to interview today William Chapman Nyaho. Chapman Nyaho started playing when he was 5. He grew up in a musical family where he received lots of positive encouragement and was surrounded by all types of music. His quote, "In my teens, people started saying I should become a banker or something, so I wouldn't spend my life poor," he said. "But my dad told me to keep doing what I loved to do." That was piano. Chapman Nyaho left Africa in 1978 to attend Oxford University, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in music. He continued his studies in Switzerland and later received a Master of Arts degree from the Eastman School of Music in New York. He received his doctorate in musical arts from the University of Texas, Austin. His quote, "After all my studies, I really wanted to get back into playing," he said. "My gift lies in interpreting." An exceptional mentor, Nyaho speaks of Maya Angelou. He says that he met the famous poet and author through family and friends when she lived in Ghana. He says, "She taught me how to share my gift. She believed in me before I believed in myself. Being true to my art influenced me to start sharing it freely." With those wonderful and inspiring words, I'm so delighted to be sitting with you here today.
Awesome.
Nyaho, it's an honor to be with you.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you so much.
So you've given me lots to work with to start, and I'd
Yeah.
love to start back to that first part of this, which is the 5-year-old Chapman Nyaho.
Yeah. I come from a family of 6 kids. I'm the youngest of them, and I just grew up with music all around me. You know, my earliest recollections were musical, really, and I was actually born in the U.S. because my dad was ambassador at that time, but we moved back to Ghana pretty shortly after that. And so, my first 4 years essentially were in Ghana, and then we moved to Switzerland where my dad was in the UN, and then back to Ghana, later on. But I grew up. My eldest sister, who was about 15 years older than me, was a pianist. And so I remember trying to copy her. I must have pestered her when she was practicing or something. But I remember my earliest recollection was, a brown Steinway at home, and my sister playing Bach and all kinds of pieces, Debussy, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so it was really wonderful. And then started having piano lessons, and it was just really exciting and listening to music. And it was just something that was easy to do. I mean, not that was just so easy, but I just loved it. So the passion to play and to try and get better, like my older sister and other sisters, was just really there.
So that family environment
Absolutely.
and having all that music around you.
Yes.
Do you remember how you felt? You were saying you used to hear your sister practicing, and you are so passionate, and music felt like the right thing for you in those earliest ages. What was that feeling for you? Was it just sort of that awe of the sound?
Oh, just yes, all the sounds, and there was just so much joy that I think I must have felt, and I just wanted to dance around and just play. And in those days you had record players, little um, stereo record player, and uh, my family, whoever it was, would play music by Elvis Presley to all kinds, and also traditional music. So high life, it was really interesting. So that's kind of there's music all around me. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
It's so interesting because you come from a diplomatic home. So
Hmm.
you come from a family where you traveled all over the world. And how do you feel that those experiences that come from also your father being an ambassador and being with the
Hmm.
UN influenced you? And you have lived in different countries, you've been all over the world. And how do you feel about those different musics and those different experiences?
I think uh, so. I, I would say I grew up being the youngest towards the end of my father's career in the diplomatic scene, and so really my experience was more when we're in Geneva in Switzerland. My older brother and sisters, they'd seen more in the US and all. Like, I do not remember any of that. I just remember Ghana, Geneva, and back to Ghana. And but that was enough. Went to concerts. Uh and then also I think just being around people, entertaining. My dad and mom used to entertain. There was just a lot of people from all over that we were exposed to. It was very, I just had a worldview experience.
Talk to me about growing up in Ghana.
Um, that was really quite wonderful. So my schooling was, it went to a kindergarten, then we went to Switzerland. And so I was in a Swiss school. Um, my first and second grade were in a Swiss French school, and then um, we started an international school, and then we went back to Ghana. So my growing back, going back to Ghana, I was in third grade, and that was so exciting because there was a lot of traditional music that just really got to my heart, and my just it was just a visceral experience. And had great music teachers, right through primary school. And then in secondary school, just had this great teacher, John Barham, who was an English uh, teacher. And the school I went to was called Achimota Secondary, Primary and Secondary School. And they really celebrated, we really celebrated our differences, our different cultures. For example, my mother comes from a different part of Ghana than my father. The language is totally different. Even the music is different. The For all intents and purposes, the harmonic structure is kind of a little bit different. It's more thirds in my mother's part of the country. It's more pentatonic in my father's part of the country. So there's just so much variety.
Right.
You know,
Diversity within.
Absolutely. And so we were all encouraged to learn how to read and write in our own different languages. And then I was in they would get people from the University of Ghana to come and teach us these different dances. So I was in the cultural group. And so I learned all these different dances. And, like last night, I played this piece by Tanya Leon, and one of the rhythms, the clave rhythm, is very much what we call malogo, and I was very tempted to dance it
I
on the
was going to
stage.
say, having attended that concert, you were dancing.
Oh,
You know what
really?
I mean? Like your body, the feeling of the music was,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it was a spectacular performance, but it was clear that you were completely engaged,
Yeah.
mind, body,
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, my experience in Achimota School was just amazing. It was a boarding school like most schools at that time in Ghana, because people came from afar to study, and it was just a really amazing experience. I was there, so music was cultural music and then also classical music. So, I was playing Chopin and Beethoven and doing all kinds of things with my teacher. And then we had great, education. It was just did the O levels, ordinary levels, exams, and then the advanced level exams, which are like the high school
Right.
equivalent. Yeah, and did music, and we were working on Manfred symphonies, Schubert symphonies, and Elgar serenade for strings, and it was quite amazing. I mean, we had to know in high school, Winterreise, inside out, key structures, word painting, and all that kind of the psychological travel. I mean, it
That's
was quite
extraordinary.
seriously.
Really, that's an extraordinary pre-college
It
experience.
was, it was really extraordinary. It was amazing.
It is. It's
Yeah. So
incredible.
really, that really prepared me for, you know, going anywhere really.
For sure. I have a question.
Hmm.
When after high school, was there any doubt you would pursue music? You have the quote about some people said be a
Yeah.
banker. What's that all about? Was someone suggesting with your intellect and abilities to go in any direction? Were
Um,
you always compelled to study music?
I, I was always compelled. Yes, I was compelled to study music. It was just a really good. It was just something I really loved, and to study more about. And they had great teachers, But I I do remember, the uncles and the aunts, the sexton from, well, Yahoo, you should become a banker. Well,
Something serious.
yeah, something
Something real.
serious. And I used to be even apologetic. I'd say, "Oh, I want to have two strings to my bow, and I think I will, I will do music and then something else." And I did try to do economics, but I was an abysmal failure. That my eyes just glazed over.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
music chose you, and therefore the
yeah,
path was clear.
I guess so.
If I was interviewing your sisters
Yeah,
or your parents, if they were
yeah.
living, um, how would they describe you at that juncture, at that fork in the road for yourself?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. They were just also encouraging. They just let me do what I needed to do. It was very interesting. Maybe because also my older sister had been a musician and she studied, at the Conservatoire in Geneva. And, you know, I mean, she was really amazing and ended up in Ghana, as a professor at the University of Ghana teaching music. So I think it was part of the course, maybe.
Yeah, you had an
It was
older
just like,
sibling who sort of forged a path that made that something that was,
exactly.
as the baby, your older siblings paved the way.
They paved the way.
I say that as the
Absolutely.
oldest with a baby brother.
Oh, yeah,
I
exactly.
look forward to meeting your sisters.
Yeah.
How beautiful. And as a citizen of the global village, which you are, you then went to no less than Oxford University for your
Right.
education.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was pretty amazing and intense. Yes, I was very well prepared, in secondary school, but those also have to understand that we just didn't have opera and orchestras just and all kinds of things around. Yes. There's a lot of music I needed to learn, you know. I'm either Ghana, we would put on Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. And so if you meet a lot of Ghanaians who went to Achimoto, you know, you can ask them, oh, do you know anything about Pirates of Penzance? And they'll just, I am the very model of the model. You know, they can sing all that kind of stuff. But in terms of opera, my first real opera was the Rake's Progress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Stravinsky in Oxford, you know, and I remember hearing L'après-midi d'enfant for the first time.
A revelation.
Yeah, you know, so there's a lot of stuff I had to sort of catch up with, you know, to be with my buddies who were there as freshmen. You know, I had a lot of listening and work to do.
Were you homesick? Did you build a community at Oxford? How was it?
Um, I was homesick when it was really cold.
I'm sure.
You know,
Damp, cold winter.
Oh my gosh, it was quite brutal for me from that point of view. But no, because I think we lived. You know, I'd had older siblings who were already living in Europe and everything. It was just okay. This is how I'm
How it
supposed to
goes.
do it. Yeah, yeah.
This is how it goes.
This is how it goes.
And while you were at Oxford, were you engaged with any of your traditional music from your homeland? Did you encounter other cultures? Because in your work, you're so passionate about knowing people
Yes.
through culture, through music.
Yeah.
Were those seeds, as a cultural ambassador, that's who you are. Were those seeds in the ground? So how did they start to emerge at Oxford?
Well, the seeds were in the ground from what we did or what I experienced in Achimota in Ghana, but it was probably getting to know, you know, how to write in the style of Palestrina, 5-part counterpoint, and the style of Bach, or you know, to understand the harmonic processes of Wolf, you know, art song and things
Just
like
a
that.
little rigor.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. But I will say, you know, when we're freshmen, and I mean, there's something about the education in Oxford, you know, we as students would put up notices around town. Okay, you know, I'm putting on Brahms Requiem, and then people sign up to go sing, and I remember I was quite surprised that later on the conductor who was doing the Brahms Requiem was a freshman.
I
You know, it's
love
a
it.
very different. And so I remember I took the initiative and put on a recital. I just said, okay, I'm going to do Brahms' Liebeslieder waltzes, and I partnered with one of my tutors, and so we played the duets and just put a sign up and got amazing singers to sing Brahms' Liebeslieder waltzes. We did Dvorak, and then I got scores of Ghanaian choral music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by Ephraim Amu, who was just an amazing genius of a composer from Ghana. And so we students in Oxford, they learn how to do, you know, do all the pronunciations in Tree, in our language, and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So it was really I think that's, you know, so there was stuff germinating there already.
Yes, and that kind of freedom to explore and be creative. And it sounds like an environment where people were just doing things that they wanted to do. So
Exactly.
you said, let's do this. And
Yeah,
everybody
and-
said, yeah, that sounds great.
okay.
Let's do it.
It was pretty amazing.
It
That was a wonderful thing about Oxford. Yeah.
After Oxford, did you go straight to the United States for studies, or or you were in Geneva?
I was in Geneva.
That's right.
I was in Geneva. So, Oxford. So, just to backtrack, so when I was in Ghana, I also took all the ABRSM exams.
Sure.
And I also got the LRSM,
I sent you.
the licentiate,
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the sixth form, or, I don't know, it would be 11th or 12th
Yeah,
grade.
that's very impressive.
Yeah, it was just really amazing. But Oxford was a lot of paperwork, a lot of writing. I mean, and I couldn't afford to have piano lessons, go down to London for piano lessons. I had a few lessons which were, I just didn't have time because it was all paperwork. It was history, counterpoint, research papers, all of that stuff. So, it just went that way.
So after Oxford, you must have been sort of pining to spend time just
Exact-
exploring.
And getting back
applying
into
all that.
playing the piano.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So went to Geneva because one of my older sisters was working in the UN there. And so I entered the conservatoire. And but I remember I could barely play. I could barely look at a score and play. My technique was just horrible. And we happened to know this wonderful pianist and composer, Oswald Russell, and he kind of nurtured me back, and got me to get into the conservatoire there. So I took lessons with him, like crash course. And I guess it was a miracle I got into the conservatoire to be able to start playing again.
So that's an interesting junction because you were in a scholarly education and, keeping your music going whatever way you could. And then but you were still compelled to play and express
Yes.
yourself. So and find yourself in a place where you're almost resetting. Saying, now I've got that background. I want to get back into
back
those
into-
things. And the amount of work that would have taken.
It was quite a bit of, work. And I'll say, so I spent a year there, trying to get back into it. And I also still wanted a little bit more of the academic stuff. So that's how I applied to Eastman. And amazingly enough, I'll say, I got in. And so I got in there and started studying and hearing all this amazing music and seeing all these students just kind of fierce musicians. It was just quite. So I had a lot of work to do, and I had two things I had to say. Okay, I'm going to be a musician, whether I'm poor or rich or whatever. I had to make that commitment, and then I also had to say to myself, I'm not going to compare myself to anybody else in terms of how well they play and all that kind of stuff. And, because I had my journey.
Right.
Everybody has a different journey. And I really had to believe that to be able to survive.
How was it coming to America after spending almost all of your young life in Africa and Europe?
Mm-hmm.
And then to come to the Eastman School in New York State. How was that? What were your impressions? What were your feelings? I know your family always had connections, international connections and exposures. But it's different when you come on your journey and you land. You thought it was cold in Oxford.
It was freezing. practicing in Rochester. I mean, well, but it was it was it was it was challenging, but it was very exciting, because you know just heard so much about the US. And also, at that time, it just felt that if I was going to do what I wanted to do, the US had better facilities, and better opportunities. And it was true. Eastman was an amazing place.
Who did you study with
I
at
studied
Eastman?
with Barry Snyder.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And so, and I felt pretty much embraced, you know, at Eastman. And yeah,
And did you go right into your doctorate after your master's in
yes,
Austin?
yeah, because, I was a student and being on a Ghanaian passport, the only way was to kind of, just had to see, you just couldn't.
Keep
So,
the F1 visa rolling.
yeah, exactly.
Right. You
Yeah, there was
you
no
don't have all the
chance.
same options.
Right.
Hmm.
And so it was so I applied to Austin, and that
Why
was
Austin? How did that come about?
well, um I was just looking at different schools, and Austin seemed a little further south, a little warmer. I know this may sound a little trite, but then I saw, in the brochure, David Renner, and he studied at Eastman and studied with Cecil Garnhart, and he was a little bit older than Barry Snyder, and they were, they both so I thought I was going to be continuing in a tradition, sort of, kind of,
A continuum.
yes, in a
Hmm.
continuum. And I have to be honest, it was so much cheaper, because if I got a teaching assistantship, I mean, it was going to be a tenth or less than what, I was paying at Eastman.
Right. So it was
You
a
know,
practical decision
yeah,
and
so
opportunity at the same time.
and the facilities were amazing, and I went down. I went in the middle. Eastman, Rochester had this incredible ice storm, and I finally got on a plane, and wearing thermal underwear and everything, and just wrapped up in how many ever layers, and land in Austin. I was just like, I had to go, just rip off all these layers, and the food was great, the
Oh,
everything.
and it's a great school.
Yeah.
Great music school.
And I actually, I know, and I just come, I'd been in the U.S. I couldn't believe people were water skiing in March.
Especially after being in upstate New York.
Exactly. So I
Oh,
thought I'm going to
marvelous.
play the hell out of my audition. So
So you've had this incredible amount of education.
yeah.
And as you got towards the end of your doctorate,
Hmm.
did you decide you wanted to stay in the U.S.? Did you want to pursue an academic career? Where was your heart at that moment?
Um, my heart was well. My heart was really to continue, no matter what, with performing and teaching. But what was really cool was, after I was done with my coursework, a good friend of mine, John Ferguson, who was part of the Yes Academy, that Scott Donald and
Right.
Alison, yeah, we had met auditioning in Geneva,
Oh, wow.
and he'd been in Austin, and he told me about this amazing program in North Carolina. So I went and auditioned as a visiting artist in North Carolina, and I got a H-1B visa that way. And so I was in North Carolina as visiting artist, um, performing. I mean, we had to perform all over and in any kind of situation. broken pedals on piano, sticking notes, playing for kindergarten right through big recitals, homes. I mean, civic clubs. It was an amazing
Yeah.
experience, you know.
To be a musician in community.
hmm And learning to bring your art form and getting people interested in who you are and what you have to say in music and trying to get people connected in somehow instead of thinking of classical music as a dead art form.
Okay. When did you meet Maya Angelou?
She in North Carolina.
You did.
Yes, she
Okay.
was a professor at Wake Forest. So I mean that was an amazing experience because the college I was attached to said, "Oh, Dr. Angelo is just that you should invite her to concert." I said, "I just don't know this. She's such a big person," and they just kept insisting. And have you called her? So one day I said, just to get them off my back, I was going to call Wake Forest. I called Wake Forest, and Wake Forest, this person gave me this number, and I called it, and she answered.
Wow.
And she was, I explained to her who I was. I said, yeah, I know who your parents are and all that kind of stuff. And come, what are you doing this weekend? Come over to my place. It's just like,
Wow.
and the funny thing was, it was kind of like October or something, and I was going to give a recital, and she said, "When did you get to North Carolina?" I said, "Oh, August." I said, "And you're only calling me now?" And I was like, well. She was just so inviting and just embraced me, and it was just amazing.
How do you feel that she most impacted your life? Because you had a long relationship with her.
Yeah. Oh, just being around her and just seeing her art and how mighty it was, and yet how accessible she was. You know, I mean, I learned very quickly when she asked me to play for a group of people with her, or at a party or something with her. I just, yeah, and I would have something prepared. There's no room for, oh, I'm not quite practiced and all that kind of stuff.
Right. This is what you do.
Yeah, you just had to do it.
Be it. Yes.
And because if we asked her to recite a poem, she'd just go look and say, okay, I'm gonna recite this sonnet by Shakespeare and all that kind
Wow.
of stuff, and just she just gave of herself that way. And I learned pretty well very quickly that that was something to do. And it was so good to me. She just, I mean, there are times, she would call and say, what are you doing this weekend? And I'd say, well, I'm not I don't have anything to do, so I want you to come over. And I want you to meet some people. And she would say, I would ask her, well, who is this? She said, no, it's a secret. Or you come over. And I'd come over, and it would be Harry Belafonte.
Oh, wow.
I mean, or she's doing some project with Roberta Flack, and she just wanted us to meet, and it was just the three of us in the house. And she says, "Oh, go talk to Miss Flack," and she and I would have this amazing conversation. I mean, I had no idea Roberta Flack, played with the National Symphony. She was playing concertos and all kinds of things, I mean, she just gave me the opportunity to see all these and meet all these amazing people. so generous that way.
I'd like to connect that to you, actually, and your role as a mentor, your role as, especially for young
Mm.
musicians and teachers and performers,
Mm-hmm.
through all the work you do, and your wonderful collection.
Yeah.
So if I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how the collection came about and how that all connected on that wonderful theme of
Yeah.
generosity and service.
Well, yeah, so that particular project started in 2001. I was doing a session for MTNA in Cincinnati, and I had taken a leave of absence from the university that I was at in Louisiana, and I was on Vashon Island in Washington.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was great.
Lovely.
And I had, been able to amass all these scores, but they're out of print or manuscripts of composers of African descent. So I did a presentation into Africa, advocating piano music of Africa and the African diaspora. And luckily, Oxford University Press was at my presentation. And so they took me on, and that's how it all started up in 2000. No, it was 2002. Yeah.
How have you seen things changed since 2002 when you published that extraordinary collection?
Honestly, I really think things have really started happening. Like um, the concert last night, the piano stories, you know, somebody was saying, just look at the repertoire. I think this is the new norm.
Right?
It isn't, the
Special
old,
presentation on this repertoire was
yeah,
just part of the
it
canon.
was just exactly.
Mm-hmm. That was exciting.
And yeah, it's part of the canon, no longer the old faithfuls.
Right.
Yes, we did have Bach, and now it's just phenomenal. But, it just made everything so important and just as special as Bach, you know. So I really see there's been a huge change since, I would say, the publications, but probably even more so during the time that we were locked up with COVID and we saw the death of George Floyd, you know. I mean, that was, I think, when people had to see that played over and over and over again, I think it was like a moment where, oh, wait a minute, let's stop and think about this, you know.
And the juxtaposition of, as a world, we're all together facing this
Yes.
horrible thing, and then something so horrific.
Horrific.
It was like the extreme juxtaposition of what we thought we were being as a human race
Yeah.
and what we are.
Exactly. So I really think, and so luckily, I would say, maybe those who had these books for several years and were working or teaching them suddenly realized how important the work was. And for people to start understanding that, yes, we have diverse and we need to celebrate our diversity and promote equity and create access, And so it's just been wonderful hearing Korean piano music, hearing music by, people from the Philippines, All this amazing music is now people are hearing it,
And it's that kind of connection you speak about of, if you play the music from my country, you begin to understand who I
Who I
am.
am. It's correct.
Cultural ambassadorship through music.
And, And I would say one of the seeds that was planted for me was when I first, in '84, when I went to audition in Austin. I don't know whether I've said it 1,000 times, but I I went to study with David Renner. I wanted to study with David Renner, and knocked on his door, and he, introduced myself. So I was coming from Eastman. I liked, "So where you from?" I said, "From Ghana," and he said, "Oh, great!" And so I'll be there at your audition the next day. And guess what? After my audition, he called me back to his office to interview me and said, "I read up on Ghana in the encyclopedia the night before." And that was
Beautiful.
like, I see you.
That's right.
You know, I was very touched. And I
See you
think
and I respect you.
I respect
And I'm
you.
curious.
I'm curious. I'm interested. How can
Connect.
I, yeah. And I think that's something we all need to do for students. And I hope, what people are getting from the conferences are creating access and making sure that people are seeing who their students are, or even requiring the students to um, look at themselves and see, who am I and what's my background, what can I celebrate about myself, instead of how many etudes of this and that I need to play just to be able to make it. Who am I? I think it's just really, really, really important. And I think that's how it's going to bring healing to the world, that we are able to teach our students to value each other and value the other person from a different culture, and be curious and be happily curious, you know?
How do you feel about that in terms of music? In terms of music, what you just said.
I think I think music is such a big healer. We're humans, and it's our art and culture that defines us, and not, how much we can make in the stock market and so on and so forth. And I think if we can find music that we can connect to, or as performers or as teachers, explain to others what resonates with me and what I'm giving to you as a gift, you know, can help. I mean, music is a way to bring relief to people. You just don't know who you're going to touch or heal in a recital, just because the person's had a terrible day and they bought this ticket to come and hear you play. And oh my gosh, they played something which is kind of different. Oh, that's something I recognize, you know?
Talk about the future, because you are such an inspiring figure, inspiring educator, artist, advocate. Let's talk about the future. What's your dream future?
Wow. Uh, well, my future is, my dream of the future is more of what's happening right now.
Yes.
I'm very encouraged. I'm really encouraged that all these amazing sessions that I'm seeing, and and it's just got to be, I hope it just comes to a point where it's a normal thing, and it is not, oh, I'm going to play something exotic for you, or yeah, I don't know how else to put it.
Well, I suppose as pianists, we tend to be historically very narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about it in terms of food. You go into a city and you can have all kinds of food from all over the world,
Yeah.
and you can go in and experience that. And we think about music broadening what's available, being more curious and aware of what's available.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done
Yes.
so much to advance that for pianists.
Thank you.
You really have. It's extraordinary. And when you talk about 2001
Yes.
and sort of like over 2 decades in the
Yeah.
21st century to really sort of be the tip of the spear on this essential and critical work.
It's been amazing. It's been amazing because all of this was a labor of love, actually. It was just a labor of love. And I mean, because in those days, I couldn't get a grant,
Right.
whatever I wrote for, it was just, what's this nonsense? Or I fell in between the cracks, But it was also about just being unrelenting and trying to produce something that was varied and beautiful to look at,
Nyaho, we
Yeah.
tend to end our podcast with finish the sentence, piano inspires.
Piano inspires dialogue.
I love it. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
openness, your incredible work, your award-winning scholarship, publications,
Thank
your
you.
international mentorship, and you are a beacon and bright light in our field, and we are honored to know you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
The Francis Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, PianoInspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and PianoInspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.